Another episode of Post-Fades Cheesesteaks, our finale to the top 10 NFL players of 2021 in their respective positions. So finally got through it all just in time, because by the time this is up, it'll be, the days within the first game of the season, which is it's Bucks and Cowboys, right? On Thursday.
Bucks Cowboys, yeah.
Thursday night football. So that'll be, God, I can't believe it's a week away already. That's nuts.
Yeah, less than a week away. We're 6 days away. It's crazy. I'm excited. It feels weird. I don't know if it's because it's COVID or whatever, but it just feels weird. Maybe it's because they only had 3 preseason games, but I just don't feel like football's next week. It kind of throws me off a little bit.
When did they announce that there was only going to be 3? Like, did I miss a meeting? Like, I don't remember there only being 3 preseason games. Like, when did they announce that?
When they went to 17 games, they're like, we're adding a regular season game. We're getting rid of a preseason game.
You know what? I do remember that, actually. They just never clicked, I guess.
Well, it doesn't click until you're like in the off season and preseason. You're like, oh wait, football starts next week. There isn't another preseason game.
Well, like I only caught a little bit of the Eagles' 3rd preseason game, and like by like halftime, I was like, oh, I'll just watch the 4th game, and then it ended, and they were like, oh, that was it for the preseason. I was like, oh, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like, oh, well. Yeah, this was probably when I was a little younger, I used to I had a lot more free time. I used to just watch every Eagles preseason game from start to finish. Like, nowadays, like, I think I probably watched all of, like, a quarter of all 3 games combined. So, I got to see what I wanted. I wanted to see some of the starters, and I heard enough throughout like training camp reports, like who's doing well, and like Quez Watkins and Josh Sweat and some of these defensive players, whatever, the young guys who was doing well in camp and stuff. So
I didn't really feel
the need to watch the whole game.
Yeah, I mean, some of the preseason games weren't very exciting. The 35-0 beatdown we got from the Patriots, and then there was like one, I think it was the 3rd game, was just a ridiculous ending. Like, they had the game won so many times, and then they ended up blowing it. They let them drive the field. There was an interception. There was a Hail Mary at the end. Like, it just was nonsense.
Oh yeah, I didn't even get to see that live because I walked away, and then my friend texted me. He's like, "Did you see that shit?" I was like, "No, why? What happened?" He's like, "Jets tied the game with a Hail Mary." I was like, "What the fuck?"
yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, I didn't.
You know what though? Not to cut you off, but that's such a Eagles way to actually like lose a game in real, like a Bengals-esque tie,
Yeah,
but
listen, that's exactly what they do. They find creative ways to lose games.
That's true. But to get into it, so this, I don't even know if I said yet, this will be our top 10 safeties. So that's the last position we have left. Just Tim and I. You got to finish it out strong with the 2 of us, and then
absolutely
we will have our season preview a couple days after this one will come out. So that'll be another fun one. That we'll have Nick back on for that, so that'll be cool. But yeah, so let's get into our honorable mentions then, Tim. So who you got? Safeties. I only got 3 this time. I cut it down for you. So
good. I'm glad. So yeah. I have 2 honorable mentions because I'm steady and consistent and don't give out participation trophies.
Sure.
But I will say the 12 that I have, including my honorable mentions, they are all top 10 in my mind. It was really tough. Like, I got to like the 12 pretty easily.
The top 12 or top 10.
Right. It could have it was a tough list. I felt like last year was a lot easier. And I'm looking at the list from last year. I'm like, wow, some of these guys I didn't even think of even considering putting them in the list.
I think last year was we had a lot of veterans who were still like doing their thing, and now some of them have kind of like tailed off a little bit. So I think that opened up for a lot of mid-level, younger level guys. So
yeah, no, I would definitely agree with you that. Actually, one of the guys that I had on my list last year didn't make it this year was, current Eagle. Well, was an Eagle at the time, but Anthony Harris. So he was my number 6 last year.
All right.
He did not make the list this year, but still, something exciting, something we can mention the season preview, because I do like some of those veteran guys they brought in a 1-year contract, specifically on the defense side of the ball.
Yeah.
But with that said, let's get right to who my 2 honorable mentions were. So my first honorable mention, I went with a New York Jet who, let's be honest, they never get recognition in our top tens, and rightfully so. They've been just a mess of a franchise.
Wait, we don't. Did we never have a single Jets player make any of the top tens?
Well, last year our top safety was, a Jets player, but but outside of that, I can't really think of any Jets that have made the list.
I'm sure there's other teams that we haven't, like the Raiders. I don't think have been in it. No, Rodney Hudson, but he's not on the Raiders anymore.
Farmer Raiders, yeah. But going off on so Marcus May, he's a guy actually I'm really excited for this year. The Jets are hard to get excited for, but Marcus May is a guy I am excited for.
Right.
He kind of like took on that role that Jamal Adams was before he left, like kind of the do-it-all safety. Mm-hmm. Jamal Adams has never been really known as a stud coverage guy, and I think he showed that, especially this year, because I think even when he was in New York, he had Marcus May to kind of make up for the coverage mistakes, and Marcus May would be the guy that focused more on coverage, while Jamal Adams got to be all over the field.
Sure.
So he's always been a strong coverage guy. But what I liked is I was looking into it, and the snaps he took this year. He had a lot more snaps in the box. He had a lot more pass rushing snaps this year, all career highs. He had career highs in pass breakups 11, total tackles 88, sacks 2 of them, and 2 forced fumbles, all career highs across the board. And you know what? Those kind of sound like Jamal Adams-esque numbers. They're not on that level, but it sounds like they're putting him more in that Jamal Adams role where he's going to do a little bit more, do a little bit of everything. You're going to see him touch every part of the box score with the forced fumbles, the sacks, the tackles. And then we already know he's a good coverage guy because he was, the main coverage guy in New York, even when Jamal Adams was there. So I'm excited to see what he does now that he's in a bigger opportunity and he's basically in that Jamal Adams role. And so I just, it's hard to say anyone was successful in a 2-14 season, but I thought he was pretty good last year. Obviously, like I said, he had all those career highs. So I'm excited to see what he does this year. And then my other honorable mention is Marcus Williams of the Saints. Another guy who's definitely been, very good coverage guy throughout his career. I think he plays a perfect dynamic with Malcolm Jenkins, kind of like May and Adams were doing, because Jenkins at this point in his career is in the box a lot. He'll pass rush every once in a while. He's more of that Jamal Adams type, and Marcus Williams gets to be the coverage guy. What I really liked, because obviously Marcus Williams, will forever be known for the miracle in, Minneapolis, which
was him. Yeah.
It's tough. That's something you'll never get past. Like, that'll always be you. And listen, I'm always happy because I know that year the Eagles obviously went on to beat the Vikings and win the Super Bowl. I did not want to play the Saints that year. That was not the year I wanted the Saints.
Still don't know if we actually would have been able to beat the Saints, but
the Saints, I think we would have. You look at it and you're like, yeah, but you look at the Saints. They're young. They had Lattimore, Ramczyk, and Kamara, all rookies. Our team was veterans. What Ramczyk had a good rookie year, but he wasn't going to stop prime Fletcher Cox or Brandon Graham, and So I'd like to see Marshawn Lattimore go in his rookie season, try to go up against Alshon Jeffrey in his prime. He'd get bullied. But going off that, I actually thought was the most interesting doing this research is he had a 4.8 missed tackle percentage last year. He missed 3 tackles and 62 opportunities, which PFF graded as actually one of the best. So it's kind of, listen, that's something he'll never get away from. He'll always be the guy from a miracle in Minneapolis. But when it comes to tackling, he's become a lot more sure-sounded. So he's definitely on the rise. I like him in that defense. I like his future. He was the toughest one to keep off this list. And it was really close between my number 10 guy, who I'll get to. But he was so close. I had him as last-minute substitute out, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's in this list next year. So those are my 2 honorable mentions.
Fair enough. I also have, I didn't have Williams in my honorable mentions, but I did consider him. They might think the Saints have a weird defense. Like they run a really high safety deep. Like they're deep. Like Williams plays really far back, but he's a phenomenal coverage guy.
He's a great coverage. He reminds me that that's kind of why I like them together.
It's a weird way it's hard to evaluate because that's really all he does is coverage. He's not like a lot of my safeties in my list are like have variety. Like they're able to play in the box, able to cover, able to even some rush the passer. So factor in a little bit, but
I would agree with you on that, and I definitely helped in my rankings too. And that's kind of why I like them. Williams and May were with each other because I think they're very similar. But they also play, Adams most of May's career, and then Malcolm Jenkins for the last couple of years of Williams' career. Like they kind of can be that deep center field coverage guy because they got their counterpart is more in the box. But especially with May, I'm excited to see him take more of the maybe getting in the box, pass rush, more of an expanded role, like you were saying. So it'll be exciting. Both of them are guys I'm looking forward to. I'm happy that I was happy that they were out of the top 10. They're not there yet, but
yeah. But I also had Marcus May in my honorable mentions. I think you made good points. He's I am because he had a pretty standout year, I would say. Stepping in for Jamal Adams, and they're kind of a similar build of a player. I'm just curious to see how in the solid defense he'll be used, because when you think about who was a Niners safety, Jimmy Ward, right?
Yeah
he had a pretty quiet season, I feel like. So I don't know how they use safeties in his. I don't know what kind of defense they run. So it'll be interesting to see how they use him, but he's a good young player for sure. Anthony Harris, who you also briefly mentioned, he was, I can't remember, I don't think he made mine, but he was definitely like in consideration. Because he had that phenomenal 2019.
He led the league in interceptions.
Interceptions,
tied, yeah,
7 or 8.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I really like. I think health will be something to watch as far as the Eagles secondary is concerned, but I really like their secondary this year. It's probably, honestly, it's the best it's looked since like Lito Shepard, Sheldon Brown, Asante Samuel, Brian Dawkins days. Like, it's been a long time. And I'm not saying they're like that good. I'm just saying as far as like what they, they're all veterans. So, Nelson, Slay, I would argue they're both top 20 corners. And then I think McLeod is still a top 20 safety. And I think Anthony Harris, if he plays healthy and plays, he also, remember, like, Gannon was his coordinator in Minnesota, or not coordinator, but his like position coach or whatever. And Gannon's now the defensive coordinator of the Eagles. So
look at that. That's a little nugget I didn't know.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen very often, but when you teach me something, I get excited for that. So thank you.
Sometimes I like to put on the
That's pretty
class.
Good. All right, you know what? I'm going to steal that for our season preview on Monday.
Okay. But yeah, not to go too much more into the Eagles, but yeah, I really like their upside, and I think Harris will have a surprisingly. I think what'll happen is he'll have a really good year, and since he's on a 1-year contract, he'll either get paid. He's a little older, so I don't know how, and he's a safety. I don't know how much he'll get paid, but I wouldn't be shocked if he got like a nice deal to go somewhere else. But
hey, listen, he's in a contract year. All 3 of the veteran guys we brought in on defense were on 1-year deals. I think they're all here to cash in on their next contract. I'm surprised that they want to do it with the Eagles. That's usually something that they would want to do with a contending team. I don't know if I would say the Eagles are necessarily a contender, but hey, listen, I'm happy. I think it improved the defense a lot. But is that your last mention, or did you have one more?
No, that was my 2. And actually, real quick, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Anthony Harris and McLeod went to the same college too. So I think there were a lot of factors to push Harris to going to Philly. Which was great. Like, he was a very under the radar sign. Like, he's a great player. And my last honorable mention, who I really wanted to put on my list, but just didn't make the cut, also was someone I wanted the Eagles to go after this free agency period. Formerly of the Los Angeles Rams, now a Cleveland Brown, John Johnson III.
I don't like that.
Yeah,
I don't like that one.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of grade like second, like any defensive player who played on the Rams. You know what I mean? Like, you have Aaron Donald and Ramsey and they had a really good defensive coordinator down there. So it's hard to, that he's 11, it's not like I'm shitting on him, but I saw a lot of lists. He was high on a lot of lists, but this is my list. But he's a really good player. I don't think he'll be as good as he was last year now on the Browns. I think maybe he'll, and that's not to slight him, but I just don't think we'll see the same production. But he's a great player.
Hey, I'll get to that. And you know what? You're on a roll. You're teaching me twice today. Virginia, McLeod and Anthony Harris did go to the same college. Yeah. I'm impressed. Wow. We haven't even gotten to the top 10. You taught me 2 things today. I'm impressed.
There we go. But before we get in, I just want to say, I think this might be this list probably has the best potential for like the biggest variety, or what did you call it?
Variety.
I I'm gonna go on a limb and say we do have the same number one, but I think like two through, honestly 2 through 10, I think is gonna be pretty different. So.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, you could pretty much anyone in my top 10, you could pretty much change them in whatever order.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a couple guys. I would say my top 3 are my studs. That's my elite class.
I think you could put the top 3 in any order though. Like I think any of them.
Yeah, I would. Yeah. But we'll see. I mean, we'll see what happens.
Are we drinking anything to toast the number 10 pick? I'm still working on my Yingling Oktoberfest, so.
So this one is actually, I don't know if you've been to it. There's the brewery on Alms House Road in Richboro. It's called Warwick Farm Brewing.
Is that by the golf course?
I believe so. Are
you just saying you believe so, or do you actually know?
I didn't go, but I
okay.
I'm drinking one of the beers that came from there.
I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah, they're near like one of the smaller farm area. Yeah,
that would make sense. What do you got? It is Warwick Farm, but we have Ebb and Flow. Cool little light blue can.
Ebb and Flow.
I'm not gonna lie.
Even Flow. It's Ebb and Flow.
Ebb and Flow. It's a very big citrusy beer, or Citra IPA.
Okay, yeah.
It looks like orange juice. Like if I just poured this in a glass, I would think it was orange juice before I thought it was beer.
Okay.
And it definitely has more of a citrusy taste than it does hops, and it's a little surprising for an IPA. But
is it like a creamsicle?
No, more like just like a hazy orange kind of. It's not bad. It's not exactly what I thought it would be when I opened it up, but it's 10% for a top 10 episode. That's why we're here.
10%. It's a little heavy. Really 10% for an IPA. That's kind of. I didn't know they got that. I know stout because I drink a lot of stouts. I know they get pretty high and
yeah. I mean, you get the ones you get those super bittery ones. You know.
No, I do. I do recall that play. Like I haven't been there. I wanted to try it out though, but cool. All right. Well, with that being said, what's your 10% take on number 10? Who you got?
So this one was the one I was most excited for because
I already know. Go ahead.
He was my number 10 last year, and you and Mark. Do you remember where you had him ranked last year?
Number 2.
Okay.
Number 2.
I believe Mark also had him at number 2. And
we were somewhat, it was valid at that time, but
fair. Listen, I actually, after we did that episode, I was like, you know what? I made a mistake. I was a little too hard on him. And the only thing holding this guy back, and this is what I said last year, was the injuries. Because the only year he played a full 16 games, his rookie year, his all-pro season, he had 3.5 sacks, over 100 combined tackles, 4 tackles for loss. He had 3 interceptions, and he was just a nightmare. He had 13 passes defended in his rookie season. Was just a nightmare.
All over the field.
But that second season, 2019, he only played 5 games. And that was my main argument why I kept him at 10. I was like, dude, this guy's got injury problems. I love what he does. I just worried about the injuries. This year, he didn't play at all. Right. So I didn't want, it'd be unfair if I had him at 10 last year and it was because of injury issues. It'd be unfair to kick him out of the top 10, considering it's just injury issues. I would just be beating the same drum all over again. So I thought 10 was fair. I'll bring him back to back 10 because he is an elite player. I mean, his rookie season, you thought this was one of the best young defenders in all of NFL.
He was.
And it just hasn't come together yet because of the injuries. He's missed 27 games the last 2 years. He's only played 5 games the last 2 seasons. It's really bad, and it's hurting the Chargers a lot. So my number 10, just like last year, is Darwin Jameson. You know what? Maybe it's me, blind optimism or whatever. I just think he's going to stay healthy. I think he's going to be amazing this year. It's weird. I don't know if it's because they both went to Florida State, but if you tell me who he reminds me the most of in the NFL, it's not even a safety. He reminds me of Jalen Ramsey. Kind of like a big, very good coverage guy who can do a little bit of everything and just has that, just you watch it. I don't know. I need to see a little bit more creativity in the playmaking area. But again, I've only seen this guy play 1 season. So maybe he goes out there and just leads the league in interception. But just the body type, they did come from the same school, so maybe that's why. But I think they even played together. But the body type and then just his versatility. Like, this is a guy who can play in the box, who could rush the passer, who could cover guys, who could be the center fielder, and he did it as a rookie, and he did this. But you mentioned the Rams defense coordinator when you were trashing John Johnson for no reason. He is going to be the head coach for Darwin going forward, and it's a nice pass rush with, I know they lost Ingram, but you still got Joey Bosa there. you'll be okay.
I think they were pretty. I forget his name. They have a young D tackle who's pretty solid. But yeah, and Kenneth Murray, I'm a big fan of that linebacker. I think he had a decent rookie year. I think he'll grow into it. But
listen, they just need to get Darwin. Even with Joey Bosa on that defense, Darwin might be the best defense player on their team if he's healthy.
Oh, without a doubt.
So I will see. He's a superstar. It's just the injuries. That's why I stand at 10. And I was right last year, even though I went against myself. I was right last year because I said the injuries were a concern, and then look what happened.
Yeah, fair enough. So my number 10, and I 100% did this on purpose because I knew you were going to have him in number 10.
I love it. I love it when you just concede to my opinion.
So here's basically everything you said, which, hopefully we don't have too much more agreeing. But if he plays all 16 or 17 games now, whatever it is, I think he is a top 3 safety without question. If he gets hurt again, I'm going to be really concerned for the longevity of his career.
Yeah,
you can't, like you said, he played 5 games the year before. Last year, he didn't play any. You can't, and they're like big. They're not like, oh, you had like a boo-boo or, he was out a couple of weeks. Like it was significant injuries that required a lot of time off, a lot of rehab. And you got to imagine that starts getting to some of these players. So
I agree.
Especially at his age, I just think he needs to, obviously certain injuries are out of your control, but I don't want him to play scared either. That's just as dangerous as, playing with an injury, is playing scared. So we'll see where he ends up, but I really hope he stays healthy. And I think if he does, he'll ascend right back to that 2 spot or 1 spot. So
I couldn't agree with you more. You are, even though he is a young guy with the injuries already to his career, if he has another, say he plays 3 or 4 games, 5 games or whatever, you are worried about the future for him. Cause that's so much to come back from. But you know what? This is kind of, I would say, a make or break year for him, just in the injury aspect. Because we are still, let's be honest, we're putting him in the top 10 safeties off of his rookie year, which happened 3 seasons ago.
Right. If he, his potential is probably the highest of any player in the league on defense. But yeah, I wanted to put him at 5, 6, 7, and I was just like, I got to put him at 10. I can't justify putting him so high again. So. But yeah, I'm rooting for him. I actually almost bought a Darwin Jameson jersey last year, and then obviously got hurt. But now I'm a big fan of him. I hope he does well.
Yeah, we'll see. For the league's sake, because this was one of the young superstars the league, it looked like, from his rookie season. So I'd love to see him competitive again. But moving on,
all right.
My number 9.
Okay.
Who, I gotta be honest,
I
wasn't even thinking. I know his name. I put him on my list of consideration when I was putting it all together.
Okay.
But I looked more into it. And I was like, damn, this guy gets absolutely no love. And then I thought to his career, I was like, he plays in a very good secondary right now on a very good defense.
Okay.
This is his second team in his career. The other team that he was on to begin his career and that was drafted by, same situation. Played on a very good defense with a very good secondary. And I got to be honest, I don't think he's ever gotten the respect of being the best member, not even in the defense in his team, but in the secondary of his team on both teams that he's been on. But looking more into it, he's a hell of a player. He was PFF's number 2 overall safety. He was the number 1 coverage safety in all of PFF rankings.
Oh,
I love the situation he's in. I think his future looks really good for where he's at. He had a little bit of injury history to start his career, but the last 3 seasons he's played 16 games. And I think he's going to keep doing what he's been doing, but he is one of the more underrated guys in the league. My number 9 is Adrian Amos from the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah. I did not have him on my list. He was tough. I hate to say it, you were right. There's a lot of good players to choose from in this. But I could
a lot more competitive than last year. Yeah, a lot more competitive than last year.
Amos is, I think, did I have him? No, I didn't have him last year. I had Eddie Jackson. Because I remember I was looking at Amos last year, but yeah, he was, speaking of Eddie Jackson, he was from the Bears and then went to Green Bay. Yeah,
he doesn't put up the interception numbers. That's the main concern.
He's not a stat guy, but he's like the kind of safety you want to just kind of he takes care of business. You know?
I mean, look at, but he's a guy that's able to make other players better, like Eddie Jackson. Eddie Jackson, since Amos and Vic Fangio has left, he's not on my list, and he's completely fallen off. Like he was not top 3. Like he was arguably one of the best, like the best safety in football. You know, just 3 years ago with Amos and Fangio on the Bears. And, it's guys like that kind of help you put those stats up, get the numbers, because you're in such a good situation. But since they've moved on, Amos and Fangio, he's really struggled. And the Packers defense has gotten a lot better. Obviously, they brought in other guys. Amos came in the same free agency as Preston and Za'Darius Smith came. So, obviously there was more to it than him arriving. But, Jair Alexander, he benefits a lot from having a very good safety behind him. Darnell Savage, I think, was a young guy that his career wasn't what it is now. He's a guy I was considering for this top 10. He's a good young player, but I think Amos is, again, helping him his career. He helps the guys around him. He doesn't put up the numbers, but he is a very good coverage guy. And he's a great guy to have in secondary because he makes everyone else better because he just eliminates mistakes. And, when you're rated as the number 1 PFF coverage guy, that's for a reason. And 92 grade for that is very impressive.
Yeah, no, the only problem, like, so safeties and corners is one of those positions, and wide receiver too, where like I really don't look at PFF rankings because those are some of the positions I pay the most amount of attention to. Having grown up playing those positions and liking to like all those players are players that happen to be my favorites who played in these positions and secondary and stuff. So, for example, if you go to PFF's rankings for safeties, number 13 is Marcus Epps, the Eagles' backup, who is not good.
Well, I
don't know why he's there.
There's a snap minimum. I look at the snaps he's played. It's probably a quarter of what everyone else has played.
He did not. He was like very, very average when he had to step in for a cloud. So that's why you got to take PFF rankings they're like with a grain. What's the word? Grain of salt, or whatever it is.
That is the phrase that, I can tell.
Because I was just so blown away that he was on this fucking list. Because I was looking when you said that, I happened to have it up, and I was like, number 2, Amos. Because I thought you were talking about somebody else at first. And then I saw Marcus Epps on here. I was like, the fuck is he doing there?
Listen, I like Amos. I mean, I liked him when he was at the Bears.
No, Amos is good. I like Amos.
That was a good signing for the Packers. I like the deal when I honestly love that whole offseason they had when they brought in the Smith brothers and Amos, because Amos was, well, first off, he was a division rival. To take him from the Bears was huge.
Yeah.
And you're kind of seeing it more. Like, ever since that kind of broke, I do think that Fangio leaving had a lot to do with it as well. But, secondary, they kind of fallen off. Eddie Jackson hasn't been the same. Fuller, he's still solid, but he hasn't been the same. They kind of all fallen off since they lost that guy. And it helps to have a guy like that just can cover so well and make things easy. You can gamble. You can take shots when you have a guy that just is everywhere and going to help you like that in Amos. And he continued doing it with the Packers. I mean, I think the Packers secondary has improved mightily since he's gotten there. So he's completely underrated, but I like him a lot. It's just, if he put up 3 more interceptions a year, I think you're talking about a possibly top 5 safety with everything else.
Fair enough.
You got a number 9 there.
Yeah. So my number 9, and I just had his stats and I clicked on the wrong link. So my number 9 is a guy who I remember I wanted to put him on my list last year, but I just couldn't find room. And this team he's on had a really good season. It's a strong defense. And I would argue he is part of the best safety duo in the league.
Yeah.
So I want to give some love to Jordan Poyer of the Buffalo Bills.
Oh, okay.
And I actually think Poyer is a slight edge over Micah Hyde. Although Micah Hyde had a phenomenal playoff game against who was it, the Colts, I think.
Yeah.
He was like all over the field making huge stops, great deflections and everything. But I mean, Jordan Poyer is like the model of safety consistency to me. It's a shame he actually was a former Eagle. He was undrafted. Undrafted out of I think it was Oklahoma State. And he was cut I think second week. He made the team, I think, and then was cut, and then they brought him back on the practice squad, and then blah blah blah. Eventually he was on the Browns, and then he made a name for himself with the Bills. He's been a bona fide starter. I mean, even PFF has him listed as a linebacker. Like that's how versatile he is. But yeah, he's never gonna be the flashiest player, but like even the PFF grades are all like a super across of like 70 run defense, 70 pass rush, 70 coverage, like super consistent. You know what you're getting out of him. So I think him and Micah, I think don't get as much respect as they should. But they are very good safeties. So, and he was the guy I was thinking of between him and John Johnson, and I went with Poyer just because of I think body of work and what he's working with. So
fair enough. It's actually funny that you mentioned John Johnson again, because guess who my number 8 is?
Is it John
Johnson?
Can we take a minute? Like how terrible is that name? John Johnson.
Yeah,
and it happened 3 times because he's John Johnson III. Like who fucked up 3 times?
Well, I think at that point, your dad's like lived through the whole, living with that name and being so generic that he's like, fuck it. What do you want to bitch about? Yeah, I named you John Johnson. It's my name. I spent my whole life with that name. I don't care what you say.
Now it's your turn to just sorrow and pain.
And he's like, you know what? You're right. And then guess what John Johnson's son's name's going to be? I guarantee John.
It's going to be John.
It's just never going to stop. John, so like you said, since you said that your eye for cornerback and wide receiver talent is better than PFF, John Johnson's a guy when I was watching, especially in the playoff run, because I was big on the Rams in the playoff run. John Johnson made plays all the time. Like Jalen Ramsey gets all the credit, but John Johnson was out there. Like he made plays. Like he was a guy that I'd be watching and be like, who is this guy? I knew the name. I love, and this is kind of a forward-thinking ranking because I do have a number 8. For a very good season with Jalen Ramsey and that secondary, which you say, with the Rams, how can you grade someone off that? Listen, if the guy can play, the guy can play. Bring back PFF, which you discredit for in the secondary. He was number 3 overall safety for PFF, number 3 in coverage, and number 6 in run defense. So that's pretty good. Top 6 across the board. Like you said, you like the guys that get in the box and cover. And I even just watching Johnson, it kind of helps when you have Jalen Ramsey because you can just take away the best wide receiver on the field and not have to worry about him. So you can do literally whatever you want with your other 10 players.
Yeah.
But he benefits from that. And I love him going to the Browns. I love that move for Cleveland and John Johnson. Here's a nice little tidbit. I think John Johnson would be perfect on the Browns because, one, John Johnson was the defensive captain on the Rams last year. It's pretty impressive considering Jalen Ramsey's also on the team, who's by far the superior player. And usually just the better player gets the captain nod off just being a better player. The Browns secondary features a lot of young guys. Everyone is 24 years or under. You have Denzel Ward, Greedy Williams, Grant Delpit, who didn't play last year, but is coming into his first season, Ronnie Harrison. These are all guys 24 years or under. John Johnson's 25. I love him in that young secondary being the leader. I would expect him to be the captain, just as he was with the Rams. And I think that's a team like the Browns. I know they were good last year, but they're still learning how to win. This is still a team that's been terrible for a very long time. Yeah. They're still learning how to conduct business and win. And a guy like John Johnson is going to teach these young guys. I like the pass rush, obviously, with Garrett, who's, any year, a contender for defensive play of the year. Clowney, you never know. So, some years he's going to be great. Some years he's not. We'll see what happens to him across from Garrett. But I like that defense. I like that secondary a lot, too, with Johnson and the young guys. So I think he's going to have a great year. I liked him a lot with the Rams, and I think he's an ascending player. I like where he's going, and I think he's in a great situation.
Yeah, I think the Browns are I don't know if I'm ready to say they're a Super Bowl sleeper, but I think they'll win their division. A little preview for that, but yeah, I like the pick. I'm not going to argue with him. I knew he was going to be either your honorable mention or in your list, so I was not to.
And he was more. I wanted to put him in the top 10 before I even did the whole research and putting the list together. Again, just watching this guy play, like he's all over the field. And you're right.
Like I said, I wanted the Eagles to go after him, but I think he got a little more dough.
I think that's just a great. Yeah, he got paid, but I think that's a great situation for team and player. And you got to respect. Like I said with Amos, I thought it was a great move for him and the Packers when they made that move, and clearly it's worked out very well. I think this could be a similar kind of move.
Fair enough. So my number 8 was a guy that I considered excluding from my list because I had him on my list last year, and then he didn't have the best season statistically. And then I kind of looked into I was like, well, why was there such a decline? And so this guy, number 8 this year, had caused a little bit of controversy last year. I had him at number 3. I was very high on him because a couple years ago he had a 87.9 PFF rating because he was, a ball hawk, one of the best safeties in the league that season.
Okay.
But number 8 this year, I have Titans safety Kevin Byard.
Wow.
Yeah, a little bit of a drop off
like this. Yeah. So you're gonna reward him by keeping him in the top 10?
I mean, it's not as much rewarding him as like. Can you name a player in the Titans secondary from last year?
All right, fair enough. Yeah, I would agree with you there.
So yeah, I mean, I was just curious, and I kept looking into what people were saying about him and try to read up on stats, and it was just he was literally asked to just command the whole field. I'm looking at snaps, he was rushing the passer on almost 20 snaps. He was in the box on 400 snaps. He was playing slot for almost 150. He was playing wide corner for 25. He was playing free safety for 500. And he was doing special teams too. He was all over the field. And I think because the seasons prior, he was mainly doing that Brian Dawkins style, free safety, but he's going to, come in the box when he needs to. And because they were so weak at corner and stuff, they were asking him to just be all over the field. He played a lot more corner than I think he anticipated. And you would hope he adapts to that. So I think if they ask him to do that again, he'll do better. And their coach just slipped his name slipped my mind, but he's obviously a former Patriots defender, Vrabel. He's he'll get his players in the right spots. So I think having Caleb Farley, who I'm a big fan of, BT corner. Yeah, they drafted him this season, so I think he'll help alleviate some of that, some of his duties, and let him be that ball hawking, hard hitting safety he was a couple of seasons ago. But yeah, I think this is more of a projection thing than a ranking from last year. Because if I was ranking him from last year, he wouldn't be in the list because he didn't have a great year statistically. But yeah, I think same with Darwin. I think he'll have a rebound. I think he'll have a good season. So listen, and most of this, we have our own metrics we go off of, but mostly this is about top 10 going into this year. And we used last year to top 10 going into this year.
Like you said, do I know anyone in this Titans secondary? No. Do I know anyone in Titans secondary this year? No. Do they have a pass rush? No. I don't. I think he's going to struggle. I think he's going to struggle again because he's on a very bad defense. And everything you said, I know I had him at number 9 last year, and you did rate him way too high last year, but he had a bad year, and I don't think that's going to change. I think the defense is going to struggle again.
Hopefully the Titans offense, can stay on the field long, which they usually,
Yeah, but eventually they're going to have to go out and stop someone, and I think they're going to struggle in that aspect of things.
Sure. I mean, like I said, he had his rookie year was a little down. Then his 2017 was strong. 2018 was his best season. 2019 was still a strong year because he made your top 10, so obviously he was doing something right.
It's true.
Then this year was down, so I think odds are in his favor that he'll rebound. But like you said, the Titans defense is kind of a mesh right now. They're trying to rebuild it. They tried out Clowney at the end, and that didn't really work. But like I said, I think Vrabel will slowly put this defense his stamp on it, and that they'll. At least him, I think he and Caleb Farley will have solid seasons. So,
yeah,
if Caleb plays because he was hurt coming out of the draft. But
all right, so my next guy, and this is this one might stir the pot a little bit.
Ooh, because my number 7 might stir the pot a little bit too.
Oh, I like it. Back-to-back pot stirring. So this,
it's all Halloween's coming up. We got to get the witch's brew going. So
it's very true. So I'll get right to it. He was our unanimous number 1 last year.
Oh, okay. I'm not starting the pod that strongly.
My number 7 is, I believe, still the highest paid safety in the NFL when he got his deal. And that's going to...
Not anymore, no.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, I thought he lost best. So my number 7 is Jamal Adams.
Okay. Yeah, he was probably the hardest player for me to put on this.
It was hard.
I knew I was going to put him on. I wasn't going to take him off. But he was the hardest to decide where... Because obviously he wasn't going to be number 1 again. But
we always talk about this when we do lists. There's some guys that drop, and it's more of not necessarily what they did, but the competition got better.
Yeah.
And this, I think, is a moment where the competition got better. He was our unanimous number one last year, but I think the competition was a lot easier last year when we were looking at top 10. I think there's a lot of young guys that stepped up that made this list a little tougher this year.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, and I'll mention it right now. He did, set the record for the most sacks by DB with 9.5. Yeah, which is, nuts. Don't get me wrong, very
better
impressive.
Than some DNs do and some edge rushers do.
That is very impressive. And watching him on the Seahawks, that's impressive. But man, he looked pretty bad in coverage at some points. And this is kind of where I had more appreciation for Marcus May, was not having Marcus May, the guy who plays that deep center field so you can do whatever you want, really hurt them. And the Seahawks were not a very strong defense, and he is the defense. And the other problem that I noticed from last year is he started showing injury concerns. Like he missed, I think he missed
his shoulder, right? Or something with his arm.
He missed. I mean, he went 16 games the first 2 years of his career. This is the third year he had 14 games.
Yeah.
And this past year he had 12. But it was like he had a couple, nagging injuries. It was like with Adams, you just never really knew. It was kind of week to week every time. And the Seahawks suffered mightily when he wasn't out there. This is the same thing that I look at with Kevin Byard. And this is mostly about next year. I worry about Adams because the team stinks around him. And the way he plays, he doesn't have the coverage guys around him like he did with Marcus May to really shine and flourish and not get torched and put in bad situations. The Jets really, they never really had to put him in tough matchups and coverage or anything. And I mean, look off the first year the Seahawks used him in 9.5 sacks. I think that tells you exactly what the Seahawks want to use him with. They're not really interested in put him in the center field position, but with how bad your team is on defense, you're going to have to put him in coverage. He's going to have to. He's arguably your best defensive player on the team. You gave up a huge contract and 2 first-round picks to get him. He's going to have to do more than just rush the passer as a safety. He does that in elite Hall of Fame historic level. Don't get me wrong. He's arguably the best pass rushing DB we've ever seen already. But what it really came down to is I couldn't let this one area of his game where he's elite at overlook the other questions I have with the injuries, his coverage, his scheme fit going forward. And that's why I had to bump him down. And I mean, I don't know where you have him. I'm pretty confident you don't have him at number 1 like we all 3 of us did last year. So yeah, I mean, obviously there was a natural regression for both of us. And he was a top 5 safety, I would say 10 minutes before we did this. He was in my top 5, 10 minutes there was stronger cases to be made for other guys. And I think he also might be a guy. I mean, he's made the Pro Bowl every single year he's been in the league, but he's also a guy that, he's kind of got a big name. He came from the New York media. The 9.5 sacks is something to look at. I think that kind of covers up some of his other areas. And watching him, you see concerns in his other areas, and namely the coverage, which when you don't have other guys around you to make up for those mistakes, you're in trouble because they will. NFL offensive coordinators are too smart. They'll find a way to put a player you don't want in coverage in a bad situation.
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk about him a little more in depth he's coming up relatively soon. But yeah, I just think, he's not, I think it's a combination of like new team, not a good defense, like you were saying right now. Yeah. So a lot of factors, but, so my number 7, who I actually thought this is who you were going to go with, but, I feel like it's a player last year we were both kind of unsure on where to place him, and I don't think either of us had him on our list because of that. But he got paid last year, and we were a little surprised because at that time I think it was the highest for a safety. Yeah. I mean, the one thing I'll say about him is this much, is that he is a tackling machine and arguably one of the best run stopping safeties. So that being said, I had Budda Baker at number 7 of the Cardinals. He was also probably the hardest to rank because I don't want to say he's overrated, but I feel like people are like infatuated with, like, people love him so much because he just tackles a lot. You know what I mean? Like, I just like something that, like, his pass coverage is fine, but it's not like the best. His coverage isn't great. Yeah. But he's a very strong run stopper. He can rush the quarterback. I think he had 2 sacks last year. But yeah, 2 sacks, 118 combined, 90 solo tackles, 3 QB hits, 7 tackles for loss, all good numbers. And then one fumble. And I mean, I'm talking about him like he's a bad player. Like he's a number 7. He's a very good safety.
Yeah.
He made All-Pro last year. It was his best year. So, but yeah, I mean, he's 4 seasons in the NFL. He's a 2-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro, or 3-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro. So clearly he's doing something right. I just think some of the other players that have a little higher can do more as far as cover and stop the run and rush. They're a little more versatile, but I think he's a really good player, and I think he's it would be interesting if we could have seen Tyrann Mathieu and Budda Baker on the same Cardinals team together.
That would have been nice. Hey, you couldn't pay them both. I actually think it's funny. I actually have no complaints to that because my number 6 is Budda Baker.
Okay, there you go.
So I'll get, and you know what? It's very to go off exactly what you were saying. He is excellent in run defense. He's one of his top run defenders, and he reminds me of Jamal Adams because they are very good at certain. Like they're very good at like I would say the minority skill of a safety. Like the main safety skill I would say is coverage. Fair,
Sure.
But Budda Baker's case, he's an awesome run defender. He's back-to-back over 100 tackle seasons, coming off an All-Pro season last year. Jamal Adams, not the greatest coverage guy, but he's an elite pass rusher. What my tiebreaker was between those two, because they're tough, because they're very similar to each other, very good players, but they lack in the area that you really want them to see well. And I looked at PFF, and Budda had a 69 coverage grade, which wasn't awful, but it's not great. Where Jamal Adams had a 52.5. That's not good. So, and that's kind of what moved it for me. I like Budda. Obviously, yeah, we were surprised last year. We didn't have him in the top 10 last year. And then the guy went on to be All-Pro. He was ranked very high in the top 100 players list, which kind of surprised us too. He got the contract. I think he's going to have a big year. Patrick Peterson left. That Cardinals defense overall got better, but Patrick Peterson left. I think Budda Baker's going to be the leader of the team. Yeah, he's going to be the voice. He's going to be the leader. He's the guy. He's going to have a very strong pass rush with Chandler Jones coming back. J.J. Watt, if he's healthy.
That's what I was going to say, yeah. Pass rush got stronger.
I like that situation for him, and I think he's going to be a guy that's looked at as the leader, and people are going to game plan around now that Peterson's gone. Like, Peterson's been the stalwart. When you thought of Arizona Cardinals defense for the last decade, it's Patrick Peterson. Now going forward, you're going to think of Budda Baker. And the lights were on him the year before when he had the 100 tackles, and he came up big and did it again this year, made All-Pro. But next year, I think he's going to look good. The Cardinals are a team on the rise. I like the moves they made. And again, I had him ranked one spot ahead of, our unanimous number 1 last year, and they remind me a lot of each other. But the one I like his future better, and the other one I have more concerns and question marks. And, so I have no concern with your number 7 because I think we're on the same wavelength with that.
Fair enough. All right. So going into my number 6, another guy, I mean, I sound like a broken record, but another guy I had a hard time ranking. Last year I had him at 5. So all I did was really factor in age at this point. But good old reliable number 6. I have Harrison Smith of the Vikings.
Okay.
I mean, he's very, I wouldn't say quietly put on a Hall of Fame career. Like quietly is in the fact that I don't think people realize like he'll probably go down as a pretty high ranking safety in like history. I don't like, to my knowledge, he really hasn't missed time with injuries. It just, he was plug and play. I'm pretty sure he started as a rookie. He, for everything we were talking about last year, I think because I had him at 5 last year, like, yeah, he'll get you interceptions here and there, but at the end of the day, he's he'll stop the run, he'll cover in space, he'll take out, the tight ends, he's great in the red zone. So it is really just, I'm just factoring the fact that eventually he's going to have to wear down, he's getting up there in age. So, but yeah, Harrison Smith, I mean, his name has no need for, explanation. Everyone knows how good he is. So I have him at number 6.
Fair enough. I mean, I definitely have him on my list. I'll get to him later, so I'll leave it alone for right now. But yeah, I would agree. I mean, my main question when I was doing this list was, where does Harrison rank as not only a top 10 safety, but like, where does he rank as a safety? Because this guy's going to be an easy Hall of Famer. Like,
without question.
When I was looking at the safety, I was like, who of these players' career could end right now and be a Hall of Famer. And I was like, Harrison Smith is the only, current Hall of Famer. And I don't think anyone would actually think of him as a Hall of Famer, but
that's what I'm saying. Like quietly,
yeah,
he's been a Hall. Like, yeah, he's.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I'll get to him a little bit. I have him later, but my number 5. I'm cracking the top 5 here.
Okay,
young guy here. So I'm assuming you're going to hate him immediately.
Probably.
But
I think if it's the young guy I'm thinking of, I probably won't hate it. So
he is, you know what? This guy had a very big year. I think next year is going to be a big year for him and everyone get to know him. He's coming into a contract year, so it kind of lined up perfectly here.
Okay.
But listen, I know you don't like PFF, but these are some stuff to pay attention to. Number 1 overall PFF safety. Number 2
I know you're talking
coverage PFF safety.
Yep.
Number 5 run defending safety. He's top 5 in the 3 metrics by PFF. That's something impressive. Now that's something to withhold and be excited about. But what's really insane is, what was it? The 13 pass breakups he had last year. Like, come on now. And that's considering,
which sounds like when you hear that like low of a number, you're like, that's not impressive. No. That is 13 is a lot, especially for a safety. They're not covering a receiver one-on-one.
Oh, no.
That means they're tracking down the ball, figuring out where the quarterback's going to go with it, and then making a play. Like, that's huge.
Even more impressive, this is when he's playing the center fielder on a terrible defense. Yeah. And like, listen, there's not many good players on the Bengals defense. Let's be honest. I would not be throwing Jessie Bates' way. But listen, they've done enough times where he can get that many pass breakups. Jessie Bates is my number 5. He's a guy I'm very excited for next year. I definitely think there's an elite tier to this safety position. He could be joining that elite tier next year.
Sure.
All eyes are going to be on him. I think the Bengals overall as a team are going to improve. I like what they did on offense. You have some good skill players. Burrow, obviously, Mixon, Jamar Chase now. They made improvements to the offensive line. They had to, because it was one of the worst things I've ever seen in a while.
Yeah.
So, I'm not saying it's a juggernaut line, but it's an improvement. So hopefully the offense improving helps make life a little bit easier on the defense. But Jessie Bates is a superstar. If you don't know his name now, you will next year. He's 25, I believe. He's going into his final year of his rookie contract. He's going to look to get paid. And if he does what he did last year, this year, you could be talking about him as being one of the highest paid safeties in the NFL, which might be ridiculous to some people. It might be like the Budda Baker thing, because I think Budda Baker snuck on some people. He snuck on me and you. Jessie Bates, for people that aren't paying attention, he's probably going to sneak up on people when he dominates again this year, gets an All-Pro or a Pro Bowl, and signs a huge contract. But outside of playing on the Bengals, this guy, there's a lot to love about this guy. Like, he just does it all. He's extremely good in coverage.
Yep.
And strong safety. He just makes things better for everyone else. He's a guy that any team in the NFL would want. So we'll see. I mean, the Bengals are not really a team that gets much, media attention or fanfare, but he's awesome. I think he's a top 5 guy, and I'm really excited to see what he does next year.
Yeah. I mean, I know I don't give praise often to the young bucks, but I really like Jessie Bates as well. He'll come up in a couple of spots, but
couple of spots. Interesting.
Couple of spots. Yeah, that'll be. I mean, if it's typical Bengals fashion, he'll leave to go to another team, because I feel like they never pay the guys they're supposed to.
I mean, yeah, but listen, you got to look at yourself. I agree with what you say there. I mean, obviously the Bengals have been terrible for a while. It's because they mostly don't open up the playbook. But you have a very good defensive stalwart, a guy you can build a defense around. Yeah. You have your franchise quarterback. You've got pieces on the offense. This signing Bates to a deal would be the start of you leaving the rebuilding embarrassment mode and starting to actually compete. You got the quarterback, you got some pieces around him. You need to retain some of the young guys that you rebuilded for. You were rebuilding for the last decade. You need to get some kind of young guys, and you have to keep them. There's not much to that defense out. Like, Dunlap's gone, Atkins is gone. The guys of old are gone. You need to build around the new generation, and Bates is a hell of a start. He's a building block. He's the guy you build around on defense, with Burrow being the guy you build around on offense. So we'll see. But your number 5 is?
So my number 5, I'm going to bring him out of your witch's pot, is Jamal Adams.
Okay.
So, yeah, this is where I think is fair for him, just based on the fact that we had him at number 1. And it's not like – so this is my reasoning. It's not like he dropped off because he suddenly sucks, right? He dropped off because he went to a team that, sold the farm for him, essentially, was it like 2 first rounders? They sent a safety over.
Huge contract.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, they got Dunbar too, who's a solid safety. He's probably, I'd say he's top like 16 maybe. But the problem with Jamal Adams is that Seattle, I felt like didn't really know how to use him. Like it's like they bought a car and they're like, okay, but like this car's too fast for the road, so we can only take it to like the track or something. But then like we don't know how to use it on the track, so like we'll just wing it. It's kind of how I felt like the Jamal Adams thing was, is like he just looked like he was out of position all the time. But like how, like for someone who was like the perennial best safety in the league for how many years he was with the Jets, like to just go to like not knowing like where his coverage is, blowing coverage, like he was never the best at covering, you know, the middle of the field and stuff, but he wasn't this bad. So I attribute that to a lot of like growing pains, a lot of Seattle just not using him in the right spots. Because like if his pass rush grade is an 87. Yeah, he's a safety. I know. Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
That's like, the best skill he's got.
But that's the thing. Like, I think they just threw him because you got to remember, like, Seattle was in competition with Dallas for worst defense of all time. You know, halfway through the season, because it was just they had nobody to play corner really, and it's just Jamal Adams running wild. So, and their pass rush sucked. So they had to use. They had to say, all right, Jamal Adams. A, we can't get to the quarterback. B, we can't stop anyone. C, we can't cover anyone. So, hey, you're going to have to be the jack of all trades and just do everything. So we'll see how this season goes, if that changes at all. If it, if it ends up that he still sucks in coverage and he's only really used as a fucking defensive end, then, he'll continue to slide back our lists. But I just think it was a combination of a lot of bad things going on, a lot of bad mojo. And I think with the whole offseason, players getting healthy, a slightly upgraded defense, still suspect. But we'll see. I want to root for him because like we said last year, he was without question our number one. Like we didn't even have to. Oh yeah. We knew before
all three of us unanimous.
Yeah, we knew like 4 years ago he was going to be number one.
Yeah,
I mean, you know what I mean.
This top 10 was a lot more stiff in competition than last year, just from young guys stepping up. You're right. And the reason I had him in lower is going off what you said. Like,
I think your ranking is fair for what his season was last year.
Oh, yeah. No. And listen, this is the problem with him. Like, we had him one unanimous last year. I have no issue with you having him at number 5. I had him at number 7 because, like you were saying, is he kind of came in the situation they didn't know how to use him. Mm-hmm. That is Jamal Adams, though. He's a player you need to know how to use. Unfortunately, he's not the guy you can just put out in the safety position and he's just versatile and can do everything. You need to have a specific plan and a defense that's built around his strengths. The Jets, for as terrible as they are, they had no pass rush and they had a very good center field safety in Marcus May, who could take away the coverage assignments, and then Jamal Adams could just free rush because they needed it, and it kind of played to what the defense needed. So but the problem is, and this is kind of what hurt his ranking, was Pete Carroll's a smart coach, but you need to have a specific plan for him, and you got to play to his strengths, and his strengths are tough because he's a pass rusher that at safety is tough because safeties normally line up 10 yards away from the line of scrimmage where pass rushers are on the line.
Yeah.
Perfect transition to my number 4.
Oh.
Who is a guy that, could get traded to any team in the league and have absolutely no issue because he can do a little bit of everything. He can play in the box. He can play deep center. He's an incredible leader. He's healthy, never misses times. He's also a 5-time Pro Bowler. He's in 1-time All-Pro. And he's the guy who we said is probably a Hall of Famer already. And that's Harrison Smith.
Okay. Fair enough.
I like
that you see him being on another team, but it was you really threw me on a loop there when you said that, but
no, I mean, look at Harrison Smith though. The guy can cover, the guy can play in the box, the guy can pass rush a little bit. He's not Jamal Adams, but
variety or variety. Variety. Yeah, it's so bad of a pronunciation that I can't remember how you said it.
Listen, that's a little cruel. Do you pick on the kid growing up that had a stutter? Some people just aren't strong with certain words.
I used to have a stutter. Well, I don't know if it was a stutter, but I had speech impairment where I couldn't say my THs correctly.
And here you are mocking me for my variety.
Yeah, well.
With that being said, honestly, I love, because the argument you made with Jamal Adams is the exact kind of point I'm going to use to strengthen Harrison Smith's case.
Okay.
He's super versatile. Like you even said, you like the versatile safeties. He's been the definition of a versatile safety since he's entered the league. Mm-hmm. Super healthy, doesn't miss games. He's an absolute leader on that team. The Vikings defense was terrible last year. So it ended his, I think he had 5 Pro Bowls in a row. That streak ended this year. Mostly because, listen, you want to talk about Jamal Adams not having a pass rush. That once Danielle Hunter went down, the Vikings couldn't rush the passer at all. They had rookie cornerbacks that were getting burned every other play. It was a tough time to be on the Vikings defense. But let's not forget that, Harrison Smith is still the stalwart. He was my number 3 last year, so I thought it was fair to bump him out to number 4 because I think there is a top 3 elite tier, and I thought kind of the same last year, him included in it. But I just took him out. I think the elite guys in my top 3 just took a step forward. But he's Mr. Consistent, Mr. Reliable, super smart guy, especially on defense. He's been so consistent. He's been Mike Zimmer's dream player. It's a very smart defensive coordinator, and he can do whatever he wants, and he's the leader. He's not a guy that you need to build a system around like Jamal Adams. He doesn't have that. I mean, he's a very good player, but does he have an elite skill like Jamal Adams as a pass rusher or Budda Baker as a run defender? Maybe not, but he can do everything at such a high level. He doesn't need to be amazing at one thing when he's very good at all things. He's a guy that trade him to any team in this league. He's probably going to be the defense captain, and he could play whatever role you want to do. You want to use him in nickel, you want to put him in the box, you want to put him deep safety.
He could play linebacker.
He's super versatile. He's like, when I think of versatile safety in the NFL right now, he's one of the first people that pop in my head.
Agreed. I actually didn't. I was looking at his numbers again. I didn't realize he was 6'2".
Yeah, he's a big dude. Like, he gets in the box. He makes
sneaky
plays.
Tall. Like, I didn't realize he was 6'2". 6'2", 214.
He's a big guy who can get in the box and make plays. He's super versatile. Like, he's not a guy you just hide in the box and keep away from the deep field to get burned in coverage. He can cover. He can press. He can do man-man. He can play center field. He can also get in the box. His versatility is something that doesn't get enough credit. And he's another guy that, like, at this point, when we do these top 10s, there's some guys that we obviously know, he's in his 10th year. He's still very good, but we're at a point, maybe we should just talk about him as a Hall of Famer instead of just one of the best in the league. Because I honestly think he is if things keep continuing,
he should be first ballot.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how the rest of his career plays out. I don't necessarily think he's taken a step back. I think the team defense has, and I think it hurts him.
They're a very disappointing team.
If he can get a couple more years of solid Harrison Smith, get a couple more Pro Bowls and All-Pro if he can, you're looking at an easy Hall of Fame case, I would say. He's been a stud since he's really entered the league.
Yeah, I would say so. And so I was correct. He did start his rookie season, all 16 games.
Yep.
The only time he ever missed was, a game here or there. But his second season, he played 8 games. Then it was 16, then 13, 14, 16, 16, 15, 16. So besides one season, he missed 3 games most of his career. Yeah, 3-4 games. And for a second, cornerbacks and safeties get hurt all the time. I guarantee you every single team in the NFL will have at least one injury in the secondary.
Jamal Adams missed more games this season than I think Harrison Smith. If you're saying 3 or 4 as a career, that's, you can't put a stat or a grade on that.
Well, 6. So he's missed 6 career games.
Okay, and Adams missed 4 this year, so that tells you the versatility.
Yeah, it's nuts. But yeah, I think I had him at 6. You had him at 4. It's not too far off. I
didn't really have any issues with you having him at 6. It was really because what it came down to is
it's more just he's so good that's he's just
he's just boring. He's so good he's boring. That's it. But even actually the one thing, and what, I forgot to even say this in my tirade, the guy put up 5 interceptions this year. He was top 5 in interceptions in the league. That's pretty impressive. On a defense that had a lot of issues.
28 in his career.
Yeah, he does everything.
So, yeah, he's good player. So my number 4, which I want to guess is probably your 1 or 2.
Oh, stirring the pot.
Yeah, stirring the pot. We got nice churn going here.
Okay.
So my number 4 is Tyrann Mathieu. And
Okay. I don't know if I like this.
I will admit, last year I was pretty harsh on him. But if you remember what I was saying, is that I said I wasn't going to put him higher because I needed more consistency out of him, right? What did he give me this year? Arguably one of the best safeties had, this past season. Him and, my other three guys, slight nod, but Tyrann Mathieu arguably had one of the best seasons last year as a safety. So I gave him that bump. I think I had him at 7. I had him at 6 last year. So not too far.
Oh, that was idiotic, though. I thought you were Kevin Byard. I had him at number 2 last year.
You had Mathieu at 2 last year?
Yes. He was kind of awesome. Did you see them win a Super Bowl and him being the most important player on that defense?
Oh, my God. Yeah. Whatever.
All right, I'll wait, hold on.
But yeah, so last, not to reiterate, because if you want to know what I said last year, go watch last year's episode. But to give you the Spark notes, I basically said, hey, look, he's been on like 3 different teams in the past like 4 seasons. I just want to see some consistency. I want to see him stay with the team and, be that elite level player we saw coming out of LSU when he went to the Cardinals. So, and he did that last year. So I just personally like these other 3 players a little more, one of which I was also harsh on last year, who also improved on what I was asking for. So
I'm sorry, I'm detecting a theme throughout this episode. You making mistakes from last year and then correcting them this year.
No, they weren't mistakes. They were if-then statements. So like I said with Mathieu,
also known as mistakes.
If he shows me consistency, he will rise. Yes. And he did show me consistency. He rose.
Oh, yes, of course.
That's how it works.
I got to say, one thing. You have, I'm assuming that 2 of your top 3 are going to be the same as mine, because I do have Mathieu in my top 3.
I would hope I would hope so.
You are making a big mistake. I just went on a whole thing about Jessie Bates, and I assume he's in your top 3. Man, Jessie Bates, he might have done it. He may have had a big season. He is not better than Tyrann Mathieu. You are making a big mistake on that one.
I don't know.
All right, I think I don't like that at all. Actually.
But we're talking.
I hate everything
but we're
about
talking
that
top
ranking.
5 here, and you're getting super heated over that.
Because you know what, it's so wrong that I'm really having trouble just letting it go. But I'll try to.
Not if he had a better season than the other guy ever had. But
all right, it seems like you have an argument stocked up and ready to go for this because it's so ridiculous.
I got to come prepared with ammo. What do you mean?
All right, fair enough. You know what? I'll keep this one short because I'm excited to hear your nonsense come. So, my number 3, and it's actually kind of crazy that this guy is 24 years old, which blows my mind.
Okay.
He is part of this elite tier because I feel like this guy's led 2 careers. Even though he's only been in the league for 3 years, he feel like he's had 2 different careers.
I don't even know what that means, but sure.
Like, he was drafted by the Miami Dolphins to start his career, and didn't really do much. He came as high prospect, 1st-round pick, coming from, basically you call it DBU if you want. Nick Saban coaches them real well out in Alabama. He came in with a lot of fanfare. A lot of people knew his name and everything. Big hype. Rookie season didn't do too much, but the team was kind of disaster, all in all. So it's hard to really shine anything.
Sure.
Immediately, the next year, 2019, immediately, as soon as the trade's done, I think it was made in week 3, immediate dividends. He comes out and balls. Yeah. So well that he even made an All-Pro that year. Yeah. He then went on to make an All-Pro this season. So 2 Pro Bowls, 2 All-Pros, the 2 years that he found his new team in Pittsburgh. Mm-hmm. Guy's an instant playmaker. Fun fact, he's had a touchdown every single season he's been in the league, which is pretty impressive for a defensive player.
Yeah.
So my number 3 is Micka Fitzpatrick. There's a lot to like with Micka. When you talk about playmaker, man, the guy finds the ball, and when he finds the ball, he finds the end zone. Like I said, he has a touchdown every single year he's been in the league, which is extremely impressive to add that to consistency. Yeah, he never misses games. He's played 16 games every single year he's there. Super smart player. This is where, Nick Saban taught him right. He's a super smart player. And he's a guy that certain guys, we said this a lot with Buddha and Jamal Adams, like you got to know how to use them. Yeah. Like when he went to the Dolphins, it didn't seem like they knew how to use him. Then he comes to the Steelers, and it's like, this guy's so good. It just seems like you couldn't possibly use him in the wrong way. Like, he's just awesome, whatever way you put him.
He's awesome.
But he's so versatile. I like the defense he's on. He's still got Hayward, Watt, and Tuitt in front of him. He's lost some other guys. Nelson's left. Bud Dupree's out as well. So they lost a couple other defense guys, but him just as a playmaker, he's one of the best playmakers on the defensive side of the ball in the NFL. He's been that since he's got to Pittsburgh. The Pittsburgh Steelers have revitalized his career, even though he's only 3 years in. But he's an elite safety. He was my number 4 last year. So basically, actually, my top 4, well, 3 of my top 4 are the same. I just switched out Harrison Smith at 3 and put Micka there at 3 and Harrison Smith at 4. So, but I stick to that because Micka had a great year this season, better than Harrison Smith. Mostly had, to do with their defense. Micka was on a much better defense that he made better. And Harrison Smith was on a terrible defense. Okay. But Micka being a young player, I'm really excited to see what he does and keep on doing in the future. I like where he's at. I think this is Ben's last year, so I think the Steelers are going to go all in, do whatever they can to win it for him. The defense is solid. The defense is there. We always talk about the Rams having the 2 best dynamic duo on the defensive side of the ball in the NFL. Micka Fitzpatrick and TJ Watt aren't too far off of that. So I'm excited to see what he does. Huge playmaker. He's fun to watch. He's got a big swagger to him. He got in a fight this practice I was looking at when I was Googling his name that just popped up with Chase Claypool. So he's always played with a swagger, and I've liked that. Got him in a little, confrontation here and there. But when it comes to playmakers on the defense side of the ball, he's got to be one top of the list. So he's my number 3.
Fair. I will say he was one player I was a little too harsh on last year, and
I'm going with the theme.
Yeah, but he's not at number 3.
Where did you have him last year? Just curious. I don't remember off the top of my head.
7.
See, I thought your list last year was awful. And now I'm glad that it's come through, 365 days later and we can revisit this and realize how awful it was.
It wasn't terrible.
Listen, it was bad because you put Kevin Byard in your top 10. I know you only because you had him gassed up so much last year. The guy was awful this year, and you gassed him up so much last year that there was no way you weren't going to put him in your top 10 this year, regardless if he deserved it or not. But
I think it's hard to say, without going too far off here. If he wasn't in my top, if Byard wasn't in my top 10 last year, he probably wouldn't have been in my top 10 this year.
I know. You gassed him up last year. You weren't going to ditch your boy now.
Well, it's not necessarily the ditching, but it's more of you watch a player, you understand their positions and their stats and what you're expecting of them. And then it's that's why a lot of these top 10s we're doing is there's a lot of carryovers because we've established that these are the best players at their positions. I think this year in particular, because Byard had a down year and there's been a lot of younger safeties who had really good years that would have also maybe not noticed him as much. So I think it's more of just I wouldn't have looked for him, so to speak, but whatever. But yeah, my top 10 last year was Jamal Adams at 1, Darwin James 2, then Byard, Simmons, Harrison Smith, Tyrann Mathieu, Micka at 7, Earl Thomas, who I don't even know what he's doing anymore.
I looked at the list at number 8. I had Earl Thomas.
I saw that. I was like, well, see ya.
When I looked at the list from last year, I was like, wow, Earl Thomas I had number 8. Amazing what can happen in 1 year.
Oh my God. Talk about a crash.
I want to give Kevin Byard a lot of crap for falling off, man. Talk about, career not aging well. But
and then Eddie Jackson, who, like we already said, has had weird career the past few seasons. And then Devin McCourty, who, all things considered, he's still a good safety, but I don't think he's a little older. I don't think he's top 10 anymore, but
yeah. So, all right, that's last year, but crack your top 3. Who's number 3 for me?
My top 3. So, unlike past Dakota lists, I went with a young bull, a little young guy here. Okay. So, you criticized me my last pick because you said this.
Hold on. I'm gonna let you finish. Okay. But if you thought that was bad, just wait until I do my number 2. I'm going to rip this one apart. I'm going to rip everything you say right now to shreds. So go on. Just know that is waiting. But go on.
Okay. Well, a spoiler, my 2 and 3 are both entering their 4th season. Okay. And for me, usually, rookies and second-year guys is usually what I'm most harsh on. But guy going in their fourth year. I'm good with that. I've seen enough material,
That makes the criteria. All right, fair enough.
It makes the Dakota criteria. But this guy, since we like to cite PFF so much,
we do.
This past season had a 90.1 overall PFF grade.
Oh,
Tyrann Mathieu hasn't had above a 75 overall since 2015.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So, without further ado, a guy I honestly really hardly considered putting it at number 1 because of how much I like watching him. Jessie Bates at number 3 Jessie Bates the third, our second of the third in their families on to make the lists. But
that's true. Yeah.
I think you made a lot of good points about him. He's just so instinctive, so fast, so quick to react. The 13 pass breakups is nutty. And he's like I mentioned with most of my list is like a lot of these players have a lot of variety in what they're able to do. Jessie Bates, PFF's grades. I mean, pass rush, who cares for safety? Because if you're either rushing as a safety like a Jamal Adams, or you're playing coverage. Like it's really hard to be doing both at the same time, obviously.
Yeah.
So his overall, like I said, a 90.1. Run defense, 81.9, which means he can play in the box, can play that linebacker role and tackle. Coverage, a 90. 90.
All right.
And pass rush, 69.8. But I really love his play, and I think, like you said, I think he's going to ball out this year just like he did last year and get the bag, whether it's with the Bengals or another team.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, he's averaging 3 interceptions a year. He's had all 3 seasons. He's been healthy. Started all 16 games since he was a rookie every season. In the 70s, like this is the consistency model. Combined tackles in the hundreds all 3 seasons. Solo tackles in the 70s all 3 seasons. Like I said, 3 interceptions all 3 seasons. QB, I mean, this time around he was getting after the passer a little bit. He had one QB hit, but he was in the backfield a couple more times. 3 tackles for loss. Fumble. That's always good. So yes. I just think I hope they continue to use him in that same role. I think what they're allowing him to do right now is just kind of like what my, soon to be announced next player is. He's allowed to do what he's best at, like with his current team. Whereas the next guy who you mentioned at some point, was with a team where he was not really in the best position, where now he's playing the spot that clearly he's excelling at because of how huge his numbers are, how great the production on the field is. So I don't know how long I just talked without taking a breath. I feel like Eminem right now, but Jessie Bates, know this man's name. And now I'm starting to choke. Know this man's name.
I would say your face is redder than your hair just from the lack of oxygen.
All I have is beer. I don't even have water.
Look at you go.
Dedication.
Listen, I'm going to rip you to shreds now, but I
okay.
I like Jessie Bates. I made that very clear. I had him at 5. He's a top 5 safety.
I'll debate you. Go for it.
Which is completely fine. Like top 5 safety is not bad. My only real issue I have with Jessie Bates at number 3 is who you put him ahead of. And the one guy I'm most mad about is my number 2. So my number 2.
Let's hear it.
Coming off an all-pro season.
Sure.
Oh, actually, I apologize. Coming off back-to-back all-pro seasons because he was an all-pro the year before.
Sure.
He is, when you talk about one of the best teams in the NFL,
yeah,
I mean, I would say, is it real unrealistic to say that Kansas City Chiefs are the best team in the NFL? If you ask me right now, I don't think it is.
I would say they are.
And the captain, the catalyst, the backbone of that defense is Tyrann Mathieu. Let me paint you a picture. You're a visual
doesn't
guy.
Exist.
Let me paint you a picture.
Okay.
2018. 2018.
Uh-huh.
AFC Championship game. Chiefs versus Patriots.
Okay.
The Chiefs obviously have been dominating the whole NFL season. Patrick Mahomes has lit up the league. He broke every record that's ever existed.
Sure.
What was the main issue that everyone kept bringing up that whole entire season was, man, Patrick Mahomes on offense is awesome, but the defense couldn't stop a nosebleed. Their defense was so bad, and every single person knew it. They couldn't stop anyone. They end up losing that, AFC Championship game, mostly because Frank, our D4, doesn't know how to line up on sides. But that's for another time, another day.
You've made that point. There's so many episodes that
I'll never let it go.
If he listened to this at any point, he'd be like, "Man, fuck those guys."
I'll never let it go because you know what? That year, and then to sidetrack,
like you're pretty haunted by it.
To sidetrack, we had the worst Super Bowl in at least the last 15 years because D Ford and the worst officiating call ever in the existence of NFL football. But that's another time, another day. So what did the Chiefs do after that 2018 season? They went and brought in Tyrann Mathieu, my number 2 safety. Immediately, like I said, he became an All-Pro. And then they won the Super Bowl. They always had an incredible offense as soon as Patrick Mahomes took over. They needed a defensive improvement. They brought in Spagnuolo, which was good. They made the deal for Frank Clark, which was nice. But Tyrann Mathieu was the one that changed things. He's the leader of that defense, and he does a little bit of everything. He's also coming off a season where he had 6 interceptions. I just gassed up Harrison Smith for having 5. His 6 interceptions, I believe, were third most in the NFL. Are we going to ignore that? Oh, no, we're still choking over Jessie Bates' PFF grades. Tyrann Mathieu, you want to punish him because he played on 3 different teams. He played 1 year in Houston just for a cup of coffee, and then he bounced and got into a dominant position. Micka Fitzpatrick, he will go down, was drafted by the Dolphins. Played with the Dolphins.
No. He was not. Tyrann Mathieu was not plug and play his first year in Kansas City. He had a little bit of some struggling.
Sure. As much struggling as you would expect from a Super Bowl champion and All-Pro that year. But going back to what I was saying, there's nothing to hate about his game. The first 4 years of his career, he missed, let me see. He missed.
He's obviously a great
games.
player. He made the 2010s All Hall of Fame team for the decade. That's fine. But I just don't.
That's a pretty strong, accomplishment.
Sure, but accolades only take it. Tom Brady is, I'm sure, on that team and many others. He's not the best. He's not a top 2 quarterback right now.
That is the most irrelevant point I've ever heard.
No, Tom Brady is always relevant.
That's irrelevant. I believe, I don't remember what I had him. I had 4 or 3, so don't act like I just, you may have disrespected him. I didn't.
All right.
Tyrann Mathieu, his career started out rough. And rough, I mean, he had an incredible year in 2015, and he was hurt the other 3 years. He missed, I think, 19 games his first 4 seasons. He had the cup of coffee in Houston in 2018. And that since he got to Kansas City, he's changed that team. The team was incredible on offense. We knew that in 2018. Defense. What did they lack on defense? Everything. Tyrann Mathieu came in immediately and fixed that. Chris Jones was there. And don't get me wrong, Chris Jones is an awesome player. I like Frank Clark a lot as well. But Tyrann Mathieu is the leader of that defense. Anyone that says not hasn't watched Kansas City football. The guy's all over the field. They use him creatively. Like you like safeties that can do a little bit of everything. I don't understand what safety does more of a little bit of everything than Tyrann Mathieu.
Well, Tim, to go by your "what have you done lately for me" method,
win an All-Pro, go to the Super Bowl.
He had a really good season, like I mentioned, but Jessie Bates had a better season by far.
I don't think it's, first off, I don't think it's by far. Listen, this guy's coming off for all-pro season. He was 3rd in the league in interceptions. Are we going to ignore that, or are we just going to keep spewing out PFF stats for Jessie Bates?
All right, let's look at the tackles. 62. Almost half of what Jessie Bates had. Okay. Fumbles 0. Jessie Bates had 1. That's still more. Interceptions, I'll give him credit. He had 6 interceptions. That's double what Jessie Bates has. So that's
double.
There.
Oh, okay.
15 games played. Well, actually, technically, the starters didn't play 16, so that's not an injury. So I'll give him that.
Actually, the last 4 seasons, if you don't count the one game that he missed last year just for no reason, he's played every single game. Yeah, every single game in the last 4 years. That includes the cup of coffee he had in Houston.
Where is that Houston? Okay, yeah, it was 2018. That was a weird year.
See, you want to punish him because he's played for 3 different teams.
A career high in tackles that year.
Again, you want me to use he was on a terrible, pretty bad team, and someone had to make a tackle. Jessie Bates' tackle numbers went up too because he was on a bad team and someone had to make tackles. I don't have anything against Jessie Bates. I had him at 5. You putting him above Tyrann Mathieu is just unacceptable. Tyrann Mathieu is an elite defensive player. I'll take it out of position. Elite defensive player in this league has been, and as long as he's on the Chiefs, I expect him to continue doing that. I don't understand where your hate comes from, but you find reasons to hate players for absolutely no reason. So I'm not surprised at the same time.
Alvin Kamara, Grady Jarrett. Let's see.
Are you just saying names of players in the league? I don't understand what the correlation is between top 10 safety rankings.
Grady, what did I say? I said Grady Jarrett,
Alvin Kamara,
Stephon Diggs,
and all don't play safety,
and Tom Brady. You know what they were all ranked in my top 10s this year? Number 4, which means they're all very, very, very good players. Tyrann Mathieu was number 4 on my list. I am not saying he's not a good player. He's historically been very good. I'm just saying I wanted him to show me consistency. He showed me consistency. I moved them up my list, but I have 3 players who had better seasons than him last year. That's the bottom line. You're going to tell me Tyrann Mathieu had a better season than Jessie Bates?
Absolutely.
And even Micka?
Absolutely. Jessie Bates, without a doubt. Micka, sure. Yeah, I had him ranked a little bit.
Were you not there when I just read off all his stats?
Did you miss the part where I said he went to the Super Bowl? He was an All-Pro. Did you miss the part where Jessie Bates plays on
the Bengals? He's doing everything for that defense. Mathieu has solid players all around him.
See, no. Because this is where you're not giving him credit. This is why I started. This is why I started my explanation in 2018, because that defense was so atrocious before he got there, and they had Chris Jones, and D Ford, besides the fact that he can't line up on sides, is not a bad player.
Twice in one episode.
They switched him out for Frank Clark. They got rid of D Ford and brought in Frank Clark. It was kind of a wash. Chris Jones was always there. The difference maker of that defense was Tyrann Mathieu. He immediately came in and things immediately changed. They went from a laughingstock of a defense the year before
because he was the missing piece. They needed one more really good player to solidify their secondary, to solidify the whole defense. Obviously.
I'm confused on where that is a negative, though. I'm rewarding him for being that missing piece to bring an incredible team together. This is a team that went to the Super Bowl back-to-back years, and I still would say he's my number 1 team in the NFL right now.
Okay.
He was the missing piece that put it all together. Am I not going to reward that?
Let me try to break it down so you can understand. Pretend you're in high school, okay? Okay, you have a group project, all right?
Okay.
You get placed in the worst group, okay?
This sounds like when me and you went to Bucks together and I'm stuck with you, but go on.
Well, I'm going to pretend that you're smart, all right?
All right, fair enough.
You get placed in a group of 3 other people, right? The other 3 people are the dumbest people in the class. They don't have good grades, whatever. You're the smartest, all right? Okay. Then I get put. I'm a average, all right. I know. I'll say I'm not as good as you, but I'm a little above average, and I'm on the rise, all right. Which is false, but I
kind of like how this is going.
It's an example.
Keep whispering how I'm better in my ear.
I should have flipped them. Anyways, the other 3 people in my group are also at the same level as me, right? We're like in the middle, like getting up there, but we're not as good as you. God, I really hate this monologue.
This is going really well.
So you are Jessie Bates, and we are Tyrann Mathieu. You have your grade is better because you're a better player on a suckier team. It's more impressive. It's more impressive for your group to get a better grade because you're doing a lot of work on your own because you're the smartest in that group. Whereas just because we get a good grade, but it's balanced because there's good players around us. And I'm not trying to take a shot at Mathieu because he's one of those good players on that team. But I'm looking at the fact that Jessie Bates had a better season last year, backed up by stats, and he's on a worse team.
Well, it depends on the stats. He did, Mathieu did have 6 interceptions, which was 3rd most in the NFL.
Okay, that's one stat, but all the other stats that matter, he did, and all the PFF stats he was better in as well, even the pass rushing grade. So
listen, you kind of lost me halfway through that
monologue. This is the 3 and 4. We're debating the 3 and 4 here,
because that's what I think. It's so bad. Here, all right, I understood kind of what you were saying, but my main argument is this. You're saying that he went to a team with all these other players that make him look better. No, all the players that make the team look better are on the offensive side of the ball. That defense was the worst in the NFL the year before he got there. And then he turned them around. They weren't the best, but he turned them around to what they needed to be an elite team, which they were, and they won a Super Bowl. And he did it again this year.
I agree that he helped bring the defense over the top, and the Chiefs defense is still isn't like they're not great, they're good,
but he took the worst defense into an average defense, and that was a big part of what Spagnuolo had a lot to do with it too. Coaching does matter. But Chris Jones was on the horrible defense before.
Yeah.
And Tyrann Mathieu was the game changer. And that's where I think you're missing this. Because, yeah, Jessie Bates is the best player on a terrible team. But Tyrann Mathieu joined a terrible defense. The team wasn't bad, but all the good players were on the offensive side of the ball. The defense was one of the worst in the NFL. And he immediately made an impact and paid dividends right away. He made them respectable immediately.
Jalen Ramsey, when he was on the Jaguars before they started drafting defensive players around him, when he was the only guy out there, were they a good defense?
Oh, well, listen, that's completely different.
Answer the question.
No, because he was a rookie. Tyrann Mathieu's in the 6th year NFL, so he's ready to change a defense. A rookie coming in probably isn't going to change a defense.
Not a rookie, but I'm saying when he was, in his first few seasons, he was still one of the best corners, right? But the team around him was very young. They weren't very good yet. So he was a standout, playing really well by essentially himself. One player can help put a defense over the top, but one player cannot be the one-all be-all on a defense because there's so many cogs that are important to get the defense going. All I'm saying is that I was more impressed with what Jessie Bates was able to do with less than what Tyrann was able to do with more. I agree. I think Tyrann Mathieu is a huge part. I think if you took him away from the Chiefs, they would suffer. Absolutely. But I'm just saying this past season and the progress I've seen from Bates, I think he's a slight edge going into this season. That's all I'm saying.
I'll end it on this so we can get through this. But
yeah, this episode's going to go on forever.
I'll use Ramsey example again for this because the Jaguars, you are right. 2017, their peak year, had an incredible defense. There was a ton of talent all over that team. When the Jaguars started falling apart, especially on their defense, you could pretty much correspond to when Jalen Ramsey got traded. Going back to that, if Tyrann Mathieu got traded from the Chiefs, I think the Chiefs defense would have an immediate drop-off, a very big drop-off. If Jessie Bates got traded, I think the Bengals would go from a bad defense to just an even worse defense. If you took the Chiefs from I say they're an average defense right now, maybe a little bit above average, they'd probably go back to a bad defense if you got rid of Mathieu off the team. Similar to what Ramsey did with the Jaguars. The Jaguars became a bad defense when they traded Ramsey. Obviously, they had a fire sale and got rid of everyone, but Ramsey was the big piece. So if you want to use that as an example, that's the way I look at it. But I'll cease my argument. I still think you're idiotic.
You just reinforced my whole argument.
I don't. I think you heard me wrong. But go on. Give me your number 2.
Okay. Yeah, I can see nothing I was saying was getting to you because you're thick brain. So I take back all the compliments I gave you for being in the group project.
I just couldn't believe that while you were arguing me, you just kept on complimenting me.
I was trying to pepper you up so you could
I was like, wait,
I feel
like he's telling me I'm saying something dumb and trying to prove it wrong, but like he keeps gassing me up. He keeps telling me I'm the smartest, and it's kind of nice. He's trying to tear me down, but he's also building me up instead.
Yeah, it's a trick.
Yeah, sure. All right, you're number 2.
Anyways, I'll be quick with him. My number 2 guy, I mean, for lack of a better term, I kind of shit on last year. Number 7, I have Micka Fitzpatrick here. Kind of the same scenario with Tyrann Mathieu. I was like, hey, show me you can do it again, and I will bump you up the list. And I think he's also a player you could argue is the best safety in the league right now, just based on what he's able to do. Like as far as taking away the ball, it's almost unreal. Like what he's doing. He has 9 picks and 11 pass breakups over the last 2 seasons, including playoffs. Like, and we were talking about, I think it was Jessie Bates with the 13 pass breakups. Pass breakups for a safety are crazy. And Micka, this is what I was trying to make that analogy with earlier, is that Micka with the Dolphins was a lot more, he had a more restricted role, whereas now with the Steelers, they let him just roam the field, be that playmaker that he was in college, and let him really capitalize on his talents and his, speed, his athletic, his so athletic.
Yeah.
So he could probably play other positions. That's how athletic he is.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, you already talked about a lot of his stats and stuff, but I think Micka, rightfully so, deserves to be a top 3. I think you had him at 3, right?
Micka, yes, I did have 3.
I would say he's a top 3 safety in the league right now. So
okay. I got to be honest. The way this worked out, I did not think we were going to have the same number 1. Last year, I knew we would, but this year I was kind of surprised that this is the way it worked out.
I know you ride Tyrann Mathieu pretty hard, but I was honestly 50-50 on either Simmons or Mathieu for number 1 for you. So,
all right, fair enough. I mean, they were my number 1 and 2.
Yeah,
so.
I knew that much. But
let's get right into it.
Who is number 1? And since I just shit on you for like 20 minutes, I'll let you lead it off.
Yeah, shit on me. Yeah. I'm actually surprised that we agree on this one, but my number 1 safety, and I got to say, he's the best coverage safety easily in the NFL, in my opinion. And when I was making this list, I had, you have those weird memories in your head that just, they're in your brain, but they get triggered for some reason. You're like, why is that popping up in my head right now?
Oh, like a deja vu.
Yeah, kind of. But like, you're like, why is that in my long-term memory? Why am I still remembering that? And you're like, you never use it, but here it is. My memory of that was when we were making this list. Obviously I have Justin Simmons as my number 1. And I couldn't help but thinking back. I remember in 2016, I believe it was.
Okay.
The Broncos released TJ Ward. This was a year after the Super Bowl. Sure. This was a year after the no-fly zone defense. And TJ Ward obviously was the starting safety on that team, and he was a big part of that no-fly zone defense. There was a ton of talent all around him, but he was an incredible player. He was a Pro Bowl player. And then releasing him kind of was, it was the first signal that, hey, we're moving on. We're making on to the next chapter. And I remember that they kept on referencing this young guy that they liked a little bit better, Justin Simmons. He was a young, unproven guy they liked a lot. And like, you know what? You win a Super Bowl, it's hard to keep the team together. It gets expensive. Everyone's price tag goes up. That secondary in particular had a ton of studs all over the place. Yep. So they looked, who could they afford to get rid of and why? And TJ Ward moved on. He went signed with the Buccaneers and everything. And he played 1 year there and his career ended. But Justin Simmons, the young guy that no one knew of, I think he was like a 6th round or may have been undrafted. I don't even remember coming out, but he was a young guy that was making noise. I believe he was on that Super Bowl team, and he was enough reason for them to move on from TJ Ward. And they saw something. The Denver Broncos are a well-run organization, and the coaches must have knew something, or Elway knew something. And it worked out pretty well because, like I said, Ward played 1 more year, and Justin Simmons is moved on to be the prestigious number 1 on my personal rankings. And honestly, his ranking has a lot. Mathieu and Micka, I said there was an elite tier top 3. Those 3, I could live with any of them in whatever order. Simmons' outlook is something I love. Mm-hmm. I love Vic Fangio in Denver defensively. You mentioned it with Eddie Jackson because you had in your top 10 last year.
Yeah.
Eddie Jackson's fallen off since that elite safety season he had, I believe, in 18 or 19. Obviously, defense. And you know what? It corresponds kind of when Fangio lived. Fangio is a genius when it comes to defensive personnel and scheme and calling. Mm-hmm. But now they added Kyle Fuller. They drafted Patrick Surtain. With Justin Simmons leading the charge, that defense is going to look really good. And I think he's in for a hell of a year leading that secondary. Kyle Fuller and Patrick Surtain, who I like a lot as a rookie, are 2 solid corners. And Simmons playing that deep safety with the pass rush you're going to get from Von Miller and Bradley Chubb. Overall, that just speaks of a very potent, deadly defense. And Simmons is the leader of that whole defense. The guy never misses games. He's played every single defensive snap since 2018. You want to talk about not missing games. He doesn't miss snaps. He's the best coverage safety, I think, easily, in my opinion. He's the highest paid safety, so obviously the Broncos think something similar to what I'm thinking. He's so good. I don't think he gets the fanfare and the love that Fitzpatrick and Mathieu get, so that's kind of why I want to give Simmons a little bit of love, mostly because of his future, but also, he doesn't get the love that those other guys put up, the bigger names. Yeah. But he is in my opinion, the best safety in the league. So I'm assuming that's who you went with, unless you have someone out of left field.
No, nothing wild. I have Justin Simmons at number 1 of the Denver Broncos. I like that little introduction you gave there with the whole TJ Ward and everything.
I'm not going to lie. When I was making this list, I just thought back to 2016. I vividly remember reading an article, and they're like, them talking about this young guy they really like. Because you're like, yeah, listen, you don't start getting rid of the pieces of the no-fly zone a year after the Super Bowl. The no-fly zone was arguably one of the best defenses ever. And, they want to get rid of a big major part of that. You better have confidence in that young guy stepping up, especially I don't remember what he was off the top of my head. I think he's a 6th or undrafted, very late, but you got to have confidence. And man, he has made them look like geniuses. ever since then. Was he a third round?
Yeah, 98th overall.
Oh, my apologies. I thought he was later than that, but you understand.
He is disrespected like he is the later rounder. So
yeah.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but you and I were in agreement last year. We both were pretty, high on him. I forget where you had him, but I had him at 4 last year.
I had him at 5 actually.
Yeah, so pretty much the same. I think obviously his rookie season he only started in 3 games, but he suited up for 13 or was on the field, whatever. I don't know how they measure games played versus games started is obviously if you start on the depth chart, but
yeah.
Anyways, then after that, the past 4 seasons, he just continued to build on his career. He's only got 2 career sacks, but like Tim was saying, he's a coverage beast.
He's more of a coverage beast.
To describe him in the words of the wise, well, not always wise, but sometimes wise, Tim Mullen, he's amazing.
You're going to make me blush. I got to say. I also want to say, listen, Jamal Adams is an incredible pass rusher, but you look at the teams he's pass rushing for, the Jets and the Seahawks don't have a pass rush. They don't need Justin Simmons to rush pass when you have Von Miller and Bradley Chubb.
And I'll say this much too. I think either we'll see, and this is the first time he was actually honored, got a Pro Bowl, so people are starting to recognize him.
Yeah.
I think he'll either this season, I think Justin Simmons will either have a better year than he's ever had, or he'll still be very, very, very good, but his stats will just be quiet. Like they'll be pretty tame. Just based, I think Denver is going to be a sneaky team this year. Their offense is really the biggest question mark, but defensively, Von, if he stays healthy, is great. Chubb, if he stays healthy, is great. They have some solid pieces on the D line. Secondary is looking like it's improved, and Kareem Jackson is a damn good second safety next to Justin Simmons. That's a nice tandem.
Yeah.
They drafted Surtain, just like you were saying. So
signed Fuller, your VTech boy.
Yeah. So Simmons should hopefully have, less. I don't want to say responsibilities, but he'll be counted on less because more players around him will be more talented to help out. So. I think,
listen, he's the lead. I don't want to say leader because Von Miller's there, but leader of this secondary.
Oh, for sure.
He's really stepped up in the role. He's got paid, and listen, I like him a lot. I love his game.
Safety in the league, yeah.
I love his game. You're talking about 2, think back to that no-fly zone defense that obviously he wasn't a part of, but TJ Ward was a hell of a player with that team, and with Talib, Chris Harris, who was the other? There was another corner there that I'm blanking on.
Chris Harris. Oh, you said that.
I think there was one more, but it's like when you have corners like that are top tier, it makes the safety either. When you have an elite player at the safety position and good corners, let the guy make plays. I think he's gonna. I'm interested to see how the season plays out for Simmons. I really like him. I love his future. Obviously, I went on a tirade about how Tyrann Mathieu made the Chiefs a better defense, and I talked about how the Steelers still have some, good pieces together for Micka. But when you talk about safeties in the best position where they're at with Vic Fangio calling plays and being the coach and that secondary they build up, especially in the offseason, I love what Simmons' outlook looks like.
Yeah. This has actually ended up being a pretty long episode. So last point I'd like to make is that I just learned that Justin Simmons is only 3 days older than me.
Wow.
He was born on November 19th, 1993.
Well,
I was born 3 days later.
He's the highest paid NFL safety in NFL history, and my personal number 10, my number 1 in my top 10, which is more of, impressive accomplishment than the money. So where's your, what are you doing, Dakota?
We were, born within the same, a couple of days. We're obviously brothers,
It's the 3 days, all those other accomplishments are coming. You just got 3 more days. Yeah, 3 more days.
He should be honored. I will say, looking at our list, I don't think we've ever had a list where our number 1 and our number 10 are the same, and everybody else is different order.
Point.
But
yeah, that's a good point.
Besides, so you didn't have Kevin Byard or Jordan Poyer.
No.
You had John Johnson, and don't tell me Amos.
Yeah.
So that was the only real. I mean, then the rest of it was just ordering.
Listen, this is one of my.
It's closer than I thought, actually.
So wait, we got through all the top 10s. I gotta say, this is one of my favorites, mostly because looking back at last year, there's a lot of corrections to be made to your list from last year. My list, there's some flaws, but overall, my list from last year aged a lot better than yours, and that put a smile on my face.
Well, my 8, 9, and 10 didn't make the list this year. My 7 and 6, Fitz and Matthew, moved up a lot. Harrison Smith pretty much stayed the same. Simmons moved up to number 1. Jamal Adams moved back a little bit. Darwin Jameson moved back a lot. And then Kevin Byard is still hanging out.
Yeah.
I don't think my list was as bad as you're making it out to be. Your list, I don't remember being phenomenal either.
No. It was just it was well, I mean, I hit on the Darwin. You had Byard and ranked a lot higher than I did.
You predicted him to get hurt again? Like, come on.
I'm a football expert.
Oh, here we go.
I've been dabbling in a little medical stuff. I know what a meniscus is. There's different CLs, ACLs, MCLs, PCLs. I'm connected.
Yeah, I can see that.
Alrighty, well, hey, we got through the top 10s. We'll do a season preview until the season starts, and then from there, we'll have our weekly therapy sessions where the Eagles break our heart or excite us. We'll see what happens. So
they're gonna be interesting, but yeah, good stuff.
Yeah. So I'll talk to you later.
All right. Peace out.